Hello, Frizzle Fellowship. I'm going to be telling you about the last 10 books I read. Here's how we're going to organize it this time. I'm going to be telling you about them in the order that I read them, except I'm going to be saving the best for last. So you have something to look forward to all video. The last book is going to be my favorite of the bunch. So the first books that I read were two books in the Illuminae Files series, the novella Memento, which is a prologue for the series, and the second book in the series, Gemina. And the first book in the series, Illuminae, I gave 4 stars. This is a series of sci-fi adventures. There's subplots of romance, there's subplots of horror, and the storytelling method is quite interesting because it's like all found footage. Interviews, you've got videotape transcripts, you have journal excerpts, and that's the perspective of the entire book. And I will say that this mixed media aspect is done well in all these books, but I think I'm done with the series, and the reason is that despite me feeling like book 2 on a technical level is better than book 1, it also feels like it's the same as book 1. Like, despite being about completely different characters, it's dealing with the same tropes, it's dealing with the same archetypes, it's dealing with the same types of plot twists, and after reading book 1, this book felt like a repeat and kind of stale, and because I knew where all of the twists were going, none of them had any impact on me. I did like the couple in both of these books more than the couple in Illuminae, but because everything felt stale and repetitive, I think I'm gonna give these books 3 stars. And their book tone is Thistle Purple. Book tone is a reader personality test that I designed. You are most likely to like the books that match your type. So real quick, here's how the types work. The pale colors are the intellectually driven books. The darker saturated colors are the emotionally driven books. Red is plot-driven books. Blue is character-driven books, and yellow is atmosphere, world-building driven books, and then all the colors are mixes of all of those. So this book being Thistle Purple means it's intellectual, plot, and character-driven. The next book that I read was The Grace of Wild Things. This is a very cute, middle grade, cozy in a Halloween witch kind of way. It's a retelling of Anne of Green Gables, so if you're a fan of that, here you go. But you also throw in magic and a witch who is somewhat wicked, but has a kind heart in the end. And this book was so cute, easy to read. I loved all the characters. I loved the plot. It was so well balanced in its pacing, balanced between letting bad things happen to the characters while preserving the fun atmosphere and really a lot of whimsy. And I am not someone who has nostalgia attached to Anne of Green Gables, so even if you're not a fan of that, I think this one really works. This book enchanted me, it touched me, I had so much fun. In the end though, I'm giving it 4 stars because I'm not quite obsessed with it. Mostly that's just because of a target audience mismatched, where this is a book more for children and I enjoy more books for adults. But definitely recommend this one highly. Its book tone is jade green. And if you want more of my thoughts on this book, I've got a thorough review vlog and I'll link that in the footnotes. Next up, I read Freedom and Necessity. This is a historical fiction book told entirely in letters between a close friend group. It takes place in, I think, 1840s England. It's very concerned with the local politics of the time. It has the tiniest hints of paranormal activities, but I would definitely not pitch this as a book with magic because it's only the tiniest hints, really. And I had quite high expectations for this book because it's by, like, my favorite author of all time. But I found it really difficult to love this book, mostly because of the length. This book is just bloated. It's these letters back and forth between people, and so much of their letters is just blabbering on and on and on, and really slows down the plot and made it hard for me to get invested in their story. When there were moments of those interactions, of their relationships being tested, of friendships being built and broken and built again, and romances, like those scenes, I loved them. Like flashes of brilliance, those are the kind of scenes that kept me reading. It's just they came so far and few between because this book is so long. And people spent so many pages talking about nothing and scenes doing nothing and so many nothing chapters, and then finally you get a flash of awesomeness. But in the end, even those flashes of brilliance weren't enough to get me to finish this book. So I gave Freedom and Necessity 2 stars. If you would like to hear more of my thoughts, I've got a reading vlog on it and I'll link that for you in the footnotes. And it's book tone is Celadon Green. Then I read There Is a Door in This Darkness. And this is one of those books where I really should have never picked it up because it's just so obviously not the book I was going to enjoy, but it's by an author that I've loved before, so I was hoping and was disappointed. This is a contemporary fiction book for young adults. There is the smidgen of magic in it, but barely any. It is mostly about a 18-year-old stuck at home when she doesn't want to be because of the outbreak of COVID and quarantine in late 2020. It's also mixed up with the United States 2020 presidential election. And this book has so many rants about those topics, about quarantine, about United States politics, and like, I didn't disagree with any of the points. Like, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the rants were completely disconnected to like any of the plot or character development that was actually going on, so they were just constantly interrupting the story, the little of which there was because that was also poorly developed. This feels like very much one of those pandemic books where the author wrote it because they had a lot of feelings on this topic, but not because they really had an awesome story to tell that tied in nicely with that topic. And I've read quite a few of those, and every single time it's been a no from me. I imagine that there is some audience out there that this book would be cathartic and really refreshing for, but it's not me. So There Is a Door in This Darkness gets 2 stars, and its book tone is Resolution Blue. Then I read The Rom-Commers, another book that I was very much looking forward to because of the author. This book follows 2 screenwriters who are meeting together on a project to write a rom-com. Our heroine loves rom-coms. She has a passion for it, she has a talent for writing them, but she's never really gotten her big break as a screenwriter, never gotten anything actually made into a movie. On the other hand, our hero has a lot of success as a screenwriter, but has never written a rom-com before, and he's not too good at it. So they must join forces to produce something wonderful. And a lot of the conflict in this book is, first, our heroine has a handicapped father who needs a lot of caretaking, and that takes up a lot of her emotional bandwidth. And our hero doesn't really believe in love, so he has to go through a character development in order to both write a rom-com and make this romance work between them. So this book's main quality is readability. I binged this in a day, no regrets, it was so fun. I can see this gaining so much success because its pacing is great, it has a fun premise, and it's just so easy to binge. I think one of the drawbacks for me looking at this book through the longer view is that I never really quite loved our hero because a lot of his flaw was wrapped up in not respecting our heroine, and I never felt like that was quite adequately addressed. But I would definitely recommend The Rom-Commers. It's got some rom-com energy and a whole lot of nice drama chick lit energy. So very satisfying, I think, for both of those target audiences. I gave The Rom-Commers 4 stars, and its book tone is Resolution Blue. Then I read The Last Murder at the End of the World. This is a speculative mystery where the world has ended, everyone on Earth is dead, except there's a small protected island. And this island has been doing good for a few decades, all the villagers there are pretty chill, except one day there's a murder. And the catch is that this island has a pretty robust security system that reacts poorly to the murder, where it starts lowering this island's defenses. So if the villagers cannot solve this murder within the next few days, they will die. And the other catch is that their security system is telepathic and wiped everyone's minds of the night of the murder, so no one knows anything. So anyone could be a murderer. Even the investigators were following. And like that premise, chef's kiss, that could have worked so well. Keyword could have. But the problem for me, after thinking about this for many hours, trying to think through all of the plot holes, of which there are quite a few in this book, is that a mystery where literally no one knows anything doesn't actually end up being that interesting. Because you can't interrogate anyone. There's much less of that interplay of inter-character relationships because no one knows that they're guilty. And even their minds are wiped of what would have been their motive if they were the murderer, so you can't even figure out the murder based on motive. So in the end, what it is it just going around the island finding clues. Instead of feeling like a fun sleuth where you're like really exploring the drama between all of these villagers and the high stakes nature of it all, it felt more just like we were going to collect items to put in our inventory of, oh, we found a torn shoe. That's a clue. Oh, we found a dead plant. That's a clue. And then you're just filling up your clues, and then at the end of the book, like, those clues didn't even really help you solve the mystery at all. So, I'd say skip this one. I gave The Last Murder at the End of the World 2 stars, and its book tone is New York pink. Then I read Magical Hazmat. I love the concepts and setup in this book. It's urban fantasy, so we're in real world, but our protagonist has a magical job where she goes to like crime scenes and magical messes made usually by magical creatures and cleans them up so the general public doesn't discover magic. And I really loved her personality and drive for this job because she doesn't care super passionately about the act of cleaning, but she cares super passionately about the act of studying magic and especially magical creatures, where she's always looking for ways that she can use different magical creatures' blood and bones in her awesome potions, where she has like a chemistry lab in her house and she's always testing different substances, where she's coming up with ingenious ways to battle magic with science. And that mixing of magic and science, I love it. This is like the core of why I love the genre of urban fantasy, and like done very well in this book. Like, this book does not shy away from talking about the chemistry of her magical experiments, and loved it. However, I didn't love everything about this book. Though the setup and the main character, chef's kiss, amazing, the plot itself, meh. And I think mostly the core of it is, though there are high stakes to the plot, where there's like a magical serial killer on the loose, way that our main character got involved with the plot at every step, it felt very arbitrary and plot holy. Like, instead of our main character having an internal reason or a big drive to get involved in this case that isn't really her responsibility at all, it always felt like a very flimsy reason at every single step of the way. Though there is the explanation of like our character is working for the greater good, she never had anything like personally on the line connected to this case, and it really broke down my ability to root for her to solve the case as a consequence. One of the other nitpicks I have about this book is that she has a new intern sidekick guy, and he was definitely supposed to be the comic relief, and I never found him funny, so he was just annoying. But I will reiterate, I do love the ideas and the way that this book handles urban fantasy, and there are definitely some positive reviews for this book out there, so it could be for you if you also love urban fantasy. It just wasn't necessarily for me. I liked it, I didn't love it. I gave Magical Hazmat 3 stars, and its book tone is vermilion red. Now, this is a book that I picked out of my TBR jar. This is a jar that is filled with names of books that my patrons have graciously submitted to me, and I'm going to pick one out and I have to read it. If you would like to submit a book to the jar, I would love it. We need more. You can sign up for my lowest tier here on YouTube memberships or higher tiers on Ko-fi. All of that is linked in the video description. But now it is time to pick out my next read. I'm so excited. Like, so far I've read 2 books out of this jar and they've both been 3 stars, but I've liked both of them. And it's a fun adventure, you know? I'm broadening my horizons. Let's mix this up a little bit. We have, from Lena, Paladin's Grace by 𝐂𝐀𝐏𝐿. I'm excited for this one. I've heard so many good things about this book. I've read one other book by 𝐂𝐀𝐏𝐿 before. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I'm very willing to pick up another one of hers. Next, I picked up Stories of Your Life and Others. This is a sci-fi short story collection. The subgenres of sci-fi here. A lot of religious speculation of like, what if this religious idea were true? How would that impact society? And quite a few of these stories are bringing in a futuristic technology to kind of modern day and seeing what would be the impact on society. This collection was definitely a mixed bag. There were some of these that I really loved, and there were some of these that I kind of hated. Let me just tell you real quick about my top 3 stories. In 3rd place, we have Division by Zero. This is following a mathematician, and one day she discovers a new theory that breaks all of math. And this sends her into a depressive spiral, a mental breakdown episode that leads to her struggling with suicidal ideation. And then we're also following her husband as he tries to support her, but also struggles understanding what she's going through because he doesn't really get math. I felt like the beginning and the middle of this book, so strong. The ending, it did not land. Second place in the collection gets to go to The Story of Your Life. This is the story that inspired the movie Arrival, if you've ever seen that. It's about a linguist who is recruited to help try to communicate with aliens that have just come to Earth. The story definitely explores a lot of alien linguistics and exploring different ideas of if the aliens think fundamentally differently from humans, how would that influence their language, and then how would that influence the humans that are now learning their language. Very interesting. Then, my favorite story of the collection is Liking What You See. This story is exploring the idea of what if you could get a brain chip in your mind that would stop you from discriminating on people based on their looks, where you wouldn't recognize anymore if someone was really beautiful or not. And then in the story, there's a college campus which is debating and voting on if they should require their students to do this. And it's in like a documentary format where it's going around and interviewing a bunch of different students and really exploring this idea, and I felt like that one was really strong. It also had a very nice narrative thread of following a specific student's coming from this brain chip and then going off of it and seeing how her life was different before and after. As a whole, I would give the short story collection 3 stars because even though I didn't talk about them, there were quite a few stories that I kind of hated. And its book tone is chiffon yellow. And this was the book that I read with my patron book club. We have discussions on Discord and a YouTube live show every month, and this is the book that we're reading next. Then I picked up Tangled Up in You. I was so excited for this rom-com because it's a retelling of the Disney movie Tangled, the Rapunzel story, and this book nailed the Tangled vibes. We are following a girl named Ren, and she's grown up on a secluded farm, very apart from normal society, and then we're following her as she gets off the farm and discovers the real world, and really taps into her potential because she is so smart and capable and loves learning. A student at the college is Fitz, a bad boy with a heart of gold, and their paths intersect and it catapults them onto a cross-country road trip adventure together. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this one. I loved all of the Tangled references and inspiration. I loved both of our characters individually and I shipped them together. I didn't quite love the ending. I didn't think it quite stuck the landing, but I do think I'd recommend this one, especially for fans of the movie Tangled. If you would like to hear more of my thoughts on this one, I've got a reading blog and I'll link that down in the footnotes for you. I gave Tangled Up in You 4 stars, and its book tone is Resolution Blue. So now, saving the best for last, let's talk about the book that I loved the most in the last month. And that gets to go to books 4 and 5 of the Guild Codex Warped series. This is an urban fantasy series. Are you surprised this is my favorite? Because you shouldn't be at this point. This series is first perspective from a guy named Kit. He starts out the series as a criminal and then he gets recruited to join the magic police force. And then most of the books are kind of a case of the week vibe where him and his partner get assigned to solve a specific case, and oftentimes it spirals out into a high-stakes chaos kind of situation. Kit's powers is that he can create these mind illusion things, and it is utilized so well in the plot. I am continuously impressed with the new ways that this author duo thinks to use these powers with. So I love the mystery aspect of it. I love the main character's voice of these books, but also I love the interactions between our protagonist, Kit, and his partner. She starts the series very straight-laced, dedicated to the rules, and there's some conflict in the early books between them because he's more, it doesn't matter, with his con man past. But as they do more and more cases together, their trust and friendship grows, and that sparks a romance, which is so slow burn, and I love it so much. I ship it, but you only get teeny snippets of it from book to book. In book 4, the plot formula shifts a bit, where instead of having a this is your case for the week kind of vibe, it switches into, okay, now we're starting to go up against the big bad evil guy of the series. And it really does a lot of work to shaking up the status quo and raising the stakes in so many different interesting ways in both the character internal conflict, the plot things that are on the line, and the romance that's been slowly building between these characters, everything. I loved it. And I'm so excited to read the finale to the series, which is up next when it comes out. Now, I gave these books 4 stars. It wasn't quite 5 stars for me. I did love them though. It's one of those books where like it's so close to being a 5-star, but I just didn't quite get that 5-star feeling. I didn't quite get obsessed with these books. Oh, and their book tone is Byzantium purple. But it is kind of sad that I didn't get any 5 stars in this batch of recent reads, but I believe in hopeful futures, and next recent reads I think we're gonna have some. Thank you for watching, and I recommend that you watch this video of mine next where I'm doing other recent reads.